Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
All right, Brandon. Well, welcome back. I feel like I'm welcoming you back and you're welcoming me back, because I almost thought about starting tonight's show with, this is the Mental Advantage Podcast, and this is what our mission is. We're wanting to develop a show, like just go back from day one.
It's been what, 3 weeks or so?
Yeah.
So
somebody asked me the other day, they were like, "Are y'all still doing the podcast?" And I was like, "Well, first of all, thanks for listening. Secondly, it's only, it feels longer for us, I think, than probably the listeners, because whether we like to believe it or not, they go about their lives when
they do.
Not,
it's odd.
Yeah,
I don't know how they do it. You know, a grieving period of some sort would probably be
I would think
nice, but whatever.
They probably just listen nonstop on a loop to all of the other episodes.
That's what I do. You know, just very narcissistic and, try to listen.
I send in actually the ratings we've had on the show. A lot of those came right from me. Just
facts.
After listening to the show, I'm like, that was really good.
Man, that was a good one. I got to say, that John Cullen guy is really on top of his game tonight.
I really like the way he broke things down tonight.
That's funny.
No, but speaking of breaking things down, we've got a great guest tonight. Craig Wiggins, the founder of Heel and Toe for Heroes. Been in the military, did 20 years in the military, was an officer, United States Marine, the few, the proud, all of that. And just a really, really cool dude that's doing so many great things to, not only, I was telling Craig on the show when we did the interview, is that I'm always amazed by our military for a lot of reasons. But the thing that I think stands out above all is, even after all the years of service, they get done and they still are wanting to serve, and they just can't turn it off. It's just the way they're wired.
For sure. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Craig for, about 6 or 7 years, through work. And I love hearing the passion he has for his upstart. For the listeners, this is definitely an upstart, foundation to help our former military and veterans. And, you couldn't ask for a better guy, to be doing it. And I think, the one thing I know about Craig, and the one thing that, he has proven time and time again, that when I've worked with him, if he puts his mind to something, it's going to work and it's going to be successful, and he's going to drive it home. And, it's great. And I'm excited to see how this thing continues to grow over the next, several years. And I think he'll have a lot of success with it.
Absolutely. And guys, look, I should say, the call notes, on the episode. We always include, information in there, not only about the show, but also how to get in touch with the guests. And I think tonight's especially, you're going to want to really pay attention to the call notes so that you can pay attention to how you can get in touch with Craig, how you can get involved, how you can help support, because as I mentioned during the show, it's not always financial. It is, the human resource is the most important resource that we have in this country. And so we need to make sure that you're utilizing that. And there's definitely, you'll hear in this episode, lots of ways that you can help with the organization, a very needed organization that truly fills a void that exists right now as it relates to the reacclimation of a lot of our veterans back into civilian life. So definitely going to be excited about that. we mentioned that this is our first podcast in a while. And although I don't listen to all of our episodes over, I have listened to some of them, but I don't listen to all of them. But what I do, is that a way to say that?
My sixth grade self doesn't want you to get away with that, but okay.
Yeah. So one thing that happens, though, is we've had not only a lot of great guests out of the show, but a lot of those guests have their own podcasts. And Mark Glissini, if you go back all the way, I think it was like episode 9 or 11, it's somewhere in that range. When he was on the show, he mentions actually Anson Dorrance, who is the women's soccer coach at the University of North Carolina, highly successful women's soccer coach. He mentioned it on the episode he did with us, but Mark, has a podcast, Grateful and Full of Greatness. And on this podcast, he recently had Anson Dorrance. And I've been waiting to tell you about this. I didn't even tell you about it over the phone or anything like that. But Anson Dorrance gets interviewed. And at the end of this episode, Mark asks the question that so many of us ask a lot of guests, which is like, if you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell them? When I tell you what Anson Dorrance said, it's the best. It was, I was driving. I don't even remember where. I want to say it was like down in Alabama somewhere. And I almost pulled over because I thought it was such a great, answer. Anson Dorrance was asked that question by Mark, and Anson Dorrance says, I don't know why I keep saying his first and last name like he's a serial killer. Yeah.
I mean, if you throw a third name in there, I mean, Netflix is going to have a 10 episode doc about him.
But so Coach Dorrance was asked the question of what would you go back and tell your 20-year-old self? And his response was absolutely nothing. I want him to suffer. Wow. And I just thought it was such a great thing because what he's saying is that's the learning. That's what we talk about all the time. That's the growth. That is all of the, you're either winning or you're learning, you're going through these tough challenges or whatever. And so often we have asked that question on this show. We have gotten that question asked of us before, and you're always answering like, oh, I would go tell him this. And and you start to think about it. And we've talked about this on the show is, don't prepare the path for your child, prepare your child for the path. Right. And that's what he's saying is I'm not telling that person anything because that would be preparing the path for the child or his younger self.
For sure. I mean, and I think we all, if given that question, most of the time, the thing that I would think flashes in your head, it certainly does in mine, is one of your roughest periods of life, right? But for sure, that is also the thing that provides the most growth, right? If you allow it, and I think that is such a brilliant answer.
It's like somebody asks you, "Are you going to give yourself the cheat codes?" And you're like, "No. I want them to go
figure it out."
I mean, I remember, and I know you have done this with your own kids, is when, my son would be playing a video game or whatever, and there's all these different ways you could do it. And I can remember even playing video games when I was a kid, and you would have I can do it where I'm limitless lives, right? Or I can jump right ahead in the game or whatever. And it's like, why would I want to do that? Like, that's the fun of it, is going through all of those things and accomplishing something. So I knew you would love that. When he said that, I just was like, you have got to, why have I, like, nobody's thought about saying that? Like, I've heard so many podcasts and everybody gives the advice. There's a great, speaking of which, Tim Ferriss, he's got a great podcast I've been listening to. I'm going to give him a little prop on this, and
I'm sure he needs it.
He's doing all right.
He's got 1 million downloads. I'm sure we're really gonna.
And there's a young upstart Joe Rogan I want to talk to you all about as well.
Let's talk about that Joey Rogues guy.
I think he's going places.
He's gonna be good.
But Tim Ferriss has this one, Tribe of Mentors, which is this. It's a podcast that he does. It's just these questions. He brings back a lot of the people from Tools of Titans, the book that he had, like Jocko and a bunch of other guests. And he just asks them like 5 questions. They're basically just doing the podcast themselves, which I mean, that's brilliant. Like you just invite a guest on and you give them a series of questions and you're not even on the show and then you produce it. But, that's what all the listeners are like. I wish they did that right now.
We'd probably, we'd get some more guests.
Letters from the listeners.
Do I have to talk to them?
That format. So, but I thought it was great because it's so good because it's some of those types of questions. And I thought about that because one of those questions is, what advice are you going to give the younger self? And everybody answers it except for Anson Dorrance, who says nothing. I want him to suffer. If even saying nothing would have been like, oh, that's cool. But when he added, in just that way, I want him to suffer, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to pull the card.
But I think in that instance, you almost want to, because if you say nothing, it almost comes across as you didn't have any.
Yeah, nothing to share.
There's nothing to share. Yeah. Like, life has been great.
Right. Yeah.
But I think you do have to throw that, because I want him to suffer. I mean, that's awesome. I love that answer. God, I love that answer.
Pretty cool. So speaking of, suffering and challenges and all of those types of things, as we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Craig Wiggins is on the show, talking about some of the challenges, some of the suffering, some of the different things that our military, ex-military veterans are going through, their families. And I think it will really give you some additional perspective on the news stories that you see, or the things you see online that talk about some of the mental health challenges, that talk about some of the just overall challenges that our veterans go through. I know it did for me when I was listening to him talk about this. So again, find a way to help out with this cause. Heel and toe for heroes, and get your pen and paper ready. Here's Craig Wiggins. Well, as you heard from that introduction, we have Craig Wiggins, founder of Heel and Toe for Heroes, on the show this evening. And Craig, we just heard a little bit about you, but if you would, first of all, welcome to the show. We're really fortunate and to have you on the show tonight. Thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So Craig, talk to us. Why don't we start? I always feel like it's a little bit tough for listeners to just, us to just start into a subject. So before we get there, why don't we talk a little bit about your background? Of course, a lot of strong military presence there, but where did you grow up? Maybe just a little bit about what started you down that path to serving our country the way you have.
Sure. I grew up in eastern North Carolina, in New Bern, Pamlico County. Until I was 10, my mom married my stepdad, who was a Marine. We went to Washington State. I was out there for 6 years. And then we went to Alameda, California for a couple more years. And then my last 2 years of high school, I wanted to come back to North Carolina and live with my real dad. So I came back, senior year of high school. What am I going to do with my life? My dad made it to 9th grade. My mom graduated high school. So the fact I graduated high school, they were like, hey, thank God we're done.
Right.
Couldn't afford to go to college. And Marine Corps recruiter came by and was like, hey, you want to look at this? And I was like, I kind of know what this is about. It's a job. Let's go try it out. Yeah. And that's where August 1995, I joined the Marine Corps.
What's that like? I mean, we've had so many military folks that have been on this show, but I don't think I've ever asked them, like, in our show, of course, is all about that mental advantage. But what from a mental aspect is it like? You're going from, I guess you were back in North Carolina and heading down to where, Parris Island? I mean, is that where you went for all of your training?
No, actually, I went to San Diego. I chose to go to San Diego. Okay. So the rule is my stepdad went to San Diego, and actually long story, but my wife now, 25 years, she was actually in California. So I was like, hey, I want to go to California.
That'll do it.
And that's where I went to boot camp.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how are you preparing yourself from a mental aspect? I mean, you have the benefit of at least having family that had gone through the process and could prepare you a little bit, but it's still got to be a little challenging to feel like what's going to happen here.
So the good and bad thing is my stepdad, I grew up around it. I mean, I remember walking into the squadron because my stepdad was an A6 electrician. A6 Intruder still the best aircraft out there, I think. But, walk into a squadron, I remember taking them supper, and then the Navy petty officer would grab me, two of them, duct tape me to a chair. And so, like, the game started when I was like 11 or 12, and I understood in my stepdad's methodology. He would spank us only if we got to a certain level, but the rest of the time it was, hey, take two dumbbells and hold them out. Go give me 50 laps. Go do this and go do that. So for me, I don't feel like I had to prepare because I had it my whole career or my whole life, leading up through high school. And then, of course, playing sports, right? Playing sports. I played football. I played rugby, baseball, track. I mean, I pretty much did everything under the sun. But, of course, having said all that, nothing prepares you for when you step on the yellow footprints of a Marine at Paris Island or San Diego, because that is a whole different ball game. It's a game changer.
Yes. So, Craig, from a mental standpoint, I mean, part of the whole training regimen is to kind of to tear you down, to bring you back up in the Marine way, right? So, can you kind of step us through that a little bit, and like, so you have a little more of an educated entry point going in, and you kind of have an idea. But were there times that you were just like, man, what are they doing, or what am I doing here? I mean, was there ever any kind of self-doubt there?
Yeah, every day in boot camp, you're like, what the hell did I sign up for? But then I think a lot of people that join the Marine Corps, you the thing about the Marine Corps is the smallest branch, right? A lot of stories you hear about in recruiters, they're like, we want to get you. But a lot of Marine Corps recruiters, no, I only want the best. If you think you can make it, come on over. So when you're in boot camp, you're trying to get better and understand. Of course, you're figuring things out. Mentally, you're like, what the heck's going on? But physically, they do take care of you, which we can talk about the difference between boot camp and OCS later, because it's definitely officer and enlisted, because I did both. But yeah, you're just going through it and learning and trying to get better and not get hazed, not get taken to the pit, which everyone gets taken to the pit. One time we were up in Pendleton, and the senior drill instructor came out and said, you've got 20 minutes, right? There were 6 of us that were done. So he put, of 80 people, he put all 80 in the front of the squad bay, and us 6, he hazed us for like a good 30 minutes. Then he's like, okay, you pay for them, now they pay for you. He made them grab their foot lockers, and they were doing like drill, massive arms and drill and everything with their foot lockers, and all 6 of us were standing up front. And so you're going through that to build and understand, like, it's your team. What gave you a task to do, you've got to get it done and move forward. So it was, 95 was good.
I love that. It's funny. I try to anyhow watch a lot of boxing, and I'll watch some UFC and some different things like that. And one of the things, Craig, I've found over the years that I'm drawn to the most is when somebody's just absolutely getting pummeled, right? They're getting beaten. They are on that brink of, I have a decision to make. I can either give up, and you can watch it happen at times when you're watching a fight, or I can push through this and make it, and start to compete, start to fight, whatever the case may be. I think it's also why, from a mental aspect, I always talk about these turn back moments, is these times where no matter what your path is, that you just, everything doesn't seem to be going right for you. And now all of a sudden you have this decision that you're like, man, I kind of am on the brink of whether I want to just give up on this thing and go start something else. Did you have one of those moments when you were going, I mean, probably a lot, right? But I mean, did you have a specific moment when you were going through that process where you were like, I tell you what, going back to North Carolina doesn't seem so bad. I mean, I could probably, I have a college degree. I could go do some of these other things. I mean, what was your thought process? So did you have that moment where you could have turned back? And if so, what made you keep digging?
So two things on that one. The only time I really questioned that was when my grandfather died during boot camp, and I wasn't allowed to leave boot camp. So that hit hard because he raised me a lot when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. But also, when you're going through it, you're getting these little wins, and you don't realize these little wins that you're getting, right? And you're growing. And the whole point of boot camp is to push you to your limit and show you, hey, you're not dead. You're not going backwards. You know what I mean? And so for me, I think when I look back upon it, I had these little wins, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm getting better. I'm getting stronger. Okay, I'm getting this. I'm getting faster. And it's those little things that you get better on, and you grow as a person and as a unit, as a group, that you don't realize, And the whole point of I realize this now as I've done more reading and studied the Navy SEALs and Special Forces and just your brain. But that whole training is to, one, you work yourself physically to get yourself tired, but you're really training your brain to say, be quiet, brain. I can do this. I'm in control. And you convince your brain you can do more, so that you can make your body do more. And it's this dichotomy of going back and forth to figure it out. Yeah.
I love that.
And David Goggins says, when you think you're dead, you're only at 40%.
40% rule, right? That's it.
40% rule.
That's it. It's amazing. That's wild. So you get out of boot camp, Craig, and then you get deployed, right?
No. So, I can look back at real fast. The interesting thing is I joined the Marine Corps open contract, which means I said, Marine Corps, give me whatever you want me to give me. I don't care. And of course, going through boot camp, this is probably where I really had questions. Like going through boot camp, they're like, oh, you're going to be a cook. You're going to be a truck driver. And I'm like, what?
Right.
I don't want to be a cook.
That wasn't in the commercial.
Hey, what do you mean all I can be? I don't want to mash potatoes.
Exactly. But my ASVAB score was good enough. They gave me, so you go to MCT, Marine Corps Combat Training, after boot camp, and that's where you get your MOS, Military Occupancy Specialty. And so I got 6492, and I'm like, test, measurement, diagnostic, equipment, repair. I'm like, what the hell is this? And where the hell is Albany, Georgia? And I'm like, okay. And so I went to Albany, Georgia for 9 months. And I'm like, what the heck are they going to teach me? But I went through calibration school, and I learned about power supplies and AC/DC theory and oscilloscopes. I mean, when I joined the Marine Corps, I knew that there was 110 volts in the wall and 12 volts of battery in the car. That was it. And they took me through repairing electronic equipment for 9 months. And then I went back to Cherry Point, North Carolina when that was done.
That's crazy. So that would have been, so you went in 95, because I know you end up ultimately going to officer school in 2002. So all of that calibration, that was all during that same time, correct? Yeah.
So I went end of 96. I went to Cherry Point.
Okay.
My wife and I got married in December of 97. We went to the Justice of the Peace, had a small, just, hey, we're going to get married because then we'll save up, because we had no money. We'll save up and we'll have a wedding. Marine Corps comes along in February and says, hey, you're going to go to Japan by yourself for a year. So 98 June to 99 June, I went to Iwakuni, Japan by myself for a year. And I was like, I'm done. I'm out. This sucks. Just got married. You're supposed to be on station for 2 years. Not this time. They're like, nope, we need you. I'm like, screw this crap. I'm out.
Yeah.
So then in Japan, I'm like, I'm done. And the master gun sat down with me and he's like, look, we want to keep you in. What do we need to do? What can we do? I was like, I want this C7 school, which was Advanced Avionics Integrated Weapon System Maintenance. C7 school, now C1 school in Pensacola, Florida. I was like, I want that. He's like, if I get it for you, will you re-enlist? Sure. So he got me to school. I re-enlisted for 4 more years, went to Pensacola, did that for 7 months, and then went back to Cherry Point. I was supposed to go to Yuma, but my master guns called me. He's like, "You're not going to Yuma. I changed your orders. You're coming back up here with me. I need you up here." I was like, "Okay." So I went back to Cherry Point, and I was sitting there in the calibration lab. I'm like, okay, I didn't really join the Marine Corps to sit in a lab. I want to do something more.
Right.
And I remember my stepdad always telling me, like, be an officer, because he was enlisted. He's like, be an officer. So they have what's called a Marine Corps Enlisted Commissioning Education Program. Back then, you applied. If you got accepted, then you would go to your school of choice that have a naval ROTC, and you go to 4 years of it. So I applied. Took me 3 times. Third time they accepted me. Another like aha moment is my buddy got accepted a year before. He went to the Citadel. I was like, what the hell's the Citadel?
Right.
Where's that at? Had never heard of the college in my life. He went to it. And then I checked a couple different colleges. But they were all about, hey, you're going to show up here. You're going to wear a white T-shirt, and we're going to haze you. I'm like, I'm a staff sergeant in the military. No.
Right.
But the Citadel had base housing. You immediately came in. You were accepted. I'm like, that sounds like me. And I knew, like, being on the aviation side, to become a officer, I need to get back to the ground side. And so I needed a school that was going to help shape me. And the Citadel was it. And it was a great
you're in
experience.
Charleston, South Carolina. That's not such a bad gig.
That's
right?
not too bad. That's not too bad. No, it was awesome. I had a great time down there. I learned so much from the instructors down there, from the students we had. I mean, I learned a lot. I grew a lot down there for myself.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting thing. And first of all, I apologize if you've ever heard Brandon and I talk bad about the Citadel on this show. It's just because, being at the College of Charleston, it's a little bit of a rivalry.
Hey, so hold on a second. Hold on.
Disclaimer.
Hold on a second. One of us on this show, as we're walking across the parade ground where the jet is, know where I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
One of us, whose name does not rhyme with Randon, says, I mean, is this even a rivalry if we keep beating them? And I thought, okay, John, let's go.
This is among all of the cadets,
this
too.
is
it's
after
like we're walking out of a basketball game, and I mean, you've been to the field house there. You're walking out.
Yeah,
and it's just Brandon and I and a bunch of. And I couldn't pass up.
You're in testosterone central with the Lions Den.
Hey, but listen, they got their revenge because you could walk from the barracks into the baseball stadium, right?
Yep.
And I remember we're playing there, and they're all parading in, and I'm playing right field, and they are coming by, and every one of them told me how crappy I was as an individual and as a baseball player.
In unison.
They were all just like, oh my gosh, 11, you are the worst. I mean, they're just So they got their pound of flesh. Yeah, it was fun being down there.
Nice.
So you mentioned earlier, Craig, about the OCS and boot camp. So how soon, and forgive my ignorance with this, but how soon into officer training, going through that experience at the Citadel, is OCS? Is it encompass everything, or is it just a beginning piece of that?
All right. So enlisted commissioning programs, they've changed it. So I'll talk about what I went through and then tell you how they changed it now. So in October of 2002, I was accepted. Summer of 2003, I went back to San Diego for MECEP prep. You went out there, you had a crash course in education. That way they were trying to make sure that you understood what you're getting yourself into, because you've been away from the education side, right? And we've been military education, which is completely different than civilianized education. So you went out there, you got a crash course, and then you went to your checked into school. You went through your first year of school. Then between freshman and sophomore year, you went to OCS. And we went to the 6-week Bulldog program for OCS. Now the way they do it, you get accepted. You go to the 10-week program. Then you go to your school. So they changed it up a little bit. But yeah, so your first year, you're going to college, but you're also prepping to go to officer candidate school.
So Craig,
officer candidate school,
why did they change that? I'm sorry. Is there a reason behind it, or like from a value?
I don't know the official reason, but of course it's all about efficiency, right? So if you're selected to become an officer, well then let's send you to OCS and see if you're really qualified. Because a lot of people were going to school for a year and all that money was wasted, and then they would maybe get to OCS and not do so well or not make it through. So they changed it up a little bit and said, you know what, let's get you straight to OCS. You pass OCS, then you go to school and get your education.
That makes sense.
So it's a good thing. It's a good thing, and I think, because you get that out of the way.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, Craig, as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking to myself, they're wanting to separate, right? Somebody has identified something in you that makes you a good candidate for officer school in general. And then also going through that program, you've identified something in yourself that makes you feel compelled to go that direction. I'm also thinking about maybe some of the challenges or some of the, putting in some tough situations, because as I think about this, it's really important that our officers are really good at handling stressful situations, being in these uncomfortable situations, right? Because, and it's not to take away from your regular enlisted individuals, but just the fact of the matter is, I mean, when everything's hitting the fan in battle situations or whatever the case may be, you want your officers being able to stay as steady as they can be, correct?
Your job as an officer, I don't care if you're a pilot, I don't care if you're a grunt, is to lead Marines. 100% is your job. And you've got to stand up in front of them and lead them. And, if you choose not to be a leader, then you can go back to being enlisted. That's fine. But you've got to want to be a leader and take the crap, really.
Yeah.
If you don't want that, don't do it. If you want to go fly, you can join the Air Force, go fly. But as a Marine Corps officer, your job is to lead, because if someone dies, you've got to look at their parents in the face. And did you do everything that you could to make sure that they were alive? And then sometimes you have to tell people to go do something, to go on a mission that they may not come back from. And you've got to live with yourself and live with that decision. And have you done everything that you possibly can? You can't. And I learned this, but it didn't sink in with me too well. You can't show up and turn the light switch on. You've got to be prepared. You can't go, I'm going to go to Afghanistan. Now let me get ready to be here. Right. You've got to kind of develop that.
So Craig, that may be I'm thinking in my own mind, like that would be a very, very difficult thing to wrestle with, especially coming out of, some type of a combat theater, right? Whatever that looks like. So that may transition a little bit into heel and toe for heroes, right? So can you maybe dive into, so you wrap up, you get out, you and I know each other through work, right? Craig's over working with BMW manufacturing now, does a tremendous job for them. And so, and he's got a very, very cool car. So, and it will absolutely get up and go. So can you kind of get into the
he got into flying after all, is what
just with four wheels. Yeah. So can you kind of get into that?
Yeah. So, I became an officer, went to Afghanistan, was in communication, was then got accepted to be with the Marine Security Guard program in Frankfurt, Germany. And then I hit my 20 years and I was like, you know what? I'm done. It's time to call it quits. Went back to Quantico, Virginia, and thought I was going to live there. And I'm looking for a job. And I'm like, I've got an education. I've been to combat. Why can't I find a job? And my bubble got bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally I saw this BMW in device. I'm like, whatever. I was probably in 2015, between May and June, I was probably applying for 30 jobs a day. Like I was just in the library applying. It was bad. I tell people all the time that I would rather go back to Afghanistan 4 more times, then get out of the Marine Corps 1 more time. Because I mean, the stress with I'm the breadwinner. I got to take care of my family. We got school they got to get into. What am I going to do? How am I going to move into? I had to move into my friend's RV for three weeks because I was like, I can't afford. I'm about to go straight on retirement, which is half my pay, and I don't even have a job yet. Mm-hmm. So they called me up, did an interview, and the only reason I got the job was because of another veteran on the line who started talking to me, and that's Michael Alexander.
Really?
Yeah. Because him and I started talking about Afghanistan, about C6, about IT. He knew what I was talking about. But I don't think anyone else understood. And that's one thing I've learned about companies, which we can talk about, the veteran culture. They don't understand what's going on with it. So, that whole process, and Michael really helped me transition. If I wouldn't have had anyone else, I probably would have, been in trouble. But he helped me out a lot with that mental change of getting back civilianized, trying to understand what the heck was going on.
Is that common, Craig? Like, I mean, when you just explained that about 30 jobs a day, I mean, is this something that is common for a lot of veterans that are coming out of service and trying to, as you said, re-civilianize themselves? Is getting jobs? Is that a challenge a lot of times?
Big challenge, right? Yes. The veterans I started working with, yes. You're told, oh, we've got this veteran thing for you and we'll help you out. We've got a veteran recruiter. I talked to a veteran recruiter and I'm like, hey, what can I do with your company? He's like, you go find a job you think you're qualified for. Give me your resume and I'll walk it over. I'm like, wait a minute, you're the veteran recruiter. Aren't you supposed to help me? No. And so and one of that's leading into the Heel and Toe for Heroes. One of the things I'm going to do with this foundation is I'm going to start challenging these companies because they get credit from the federal government to say they interviewed veterans, and they have a fake veteran, but it's you got to understand the veteran culture. It's a whole culture by itself. I took recently SHRM for HR managers. There's a free veterans class in there. I took it, and it's supposed to help HR people understand about veterans and how they transition. And I'm trying to bring that to different companies that I work with to get them to understand, like, when a veteran comes in, put them in contact with another veteran in the organization so they can talk to someone and see what's going on. Right. But yeah, it's pretty stressful. You're trying to get out and find I wasn't tied to anything. I didn't have to be back in my hometown. I didn't want to be in my hometown. I wanted to do something else, so the door is open. Everyone's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, what's out there? Right. I want to go out there and see what's going on. Well, you got to figure out what you want to do. I get what you're saying, but like, help me. I don't even know what's out there. Like, I had no idea BMW was here. I had no idea what they could offer. But I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And so I try and pass that on to other veterans. And one guy that I went to the Citadel with, and he got out, I told him, I said, look, you're going to start arguing with your wife as you're getting out. It's like a deployment when you start working up. He's like, you're right. I was like, yeah, because you're so stressed and you're trying to figure out what's going on. But it's very, very stressful, very difficult to get a job. USA jobs, these federal jobs, you can't, you get a veteran's points, but you got to have your VA claim done, but you can't get your VA claim done until you get out, and no one's going to touch you until you get out, but you're like, I kind of need a job. So even the Sergeant Major, Keith, who's on our board, he even said he was a Sergeant Major, and when he was in, he would tell Marines, you got 6 months, 3 months, you're good. You don't need any more time than that. But when he got out, he's like, wow, I should have done a better job when I was in with the Marines. I didn't understand. And that's part of the problem. You don't know till you're out. And once you're outside the circle, you're done.
So if I hear you correctly, Craig, there's things that it had you, if we gave you a do-over, maybe when do you think you would start looking, like a year before you're getting out? Like, I mean, you see the timeline, in 2015, at whatever date you're going to be retiring. Is that what you would have done differently, is started maybe just, starting at least from a foundational standpoint, planting some seeds, putting some flyers out there to see what's available?
That's like, as far as applying jobs, no, because you can apply jobs a year out. No one's going to talk to you.
Right.
They're going to be like, oh, you're not getting out till October.
Yeah.
Well, call us and we'll see what we have then. Because you guys have seen companies, they're very, all of a sudden I need someone tomorrow, or it takes 6 months. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's kind of back and forth. I think the hardest thing is just getting and understanding the civilian world. We have a lot of military that will come back and talk to us, but then it's only like around a base sometimes. And maybe other bases do it. This is just my experience, right?
Yeah.
But you don't have that, like we don't have in Greenville, South Carolina, we don't have a lot of big base presence like they do in Quantico, Virginia, or in North Carolina. And so you don't have that here. And so to talk to someone about military here is very difficult. And that was the other thing too. Like when we moved here, like no one would talk to us, so we went from having a group that we could talk to and go get help to absolutely nothing in no small town in the South, no one talking to you. And you're like, wow, this is fun. No, we're trying to figure out life, and we're by ourselves. And you're just going through this whole mental, game. And but you don't realize what you're doing because you're like, I just got to go. The mission is get a job, keep a job, take care of my family, and you're just going. You're going.
I feel so just naive to this, to be honest with you. Like I'm so frustrated right now as I'm hearing you talk about this because, Craig, I got to be honest with you. Like there are times that you could have replaced veteran for like somebody who got out of jail. Like that, you know what I mean? Like you talking about getting out, and when you come out, like people aren't, you're almost like ostracized. It's not, I mean, maybe that's too strong of a word, but it's like if people aren't bringing you into their circle, because you just haven't been conditioned to what's been going on in the quote unquote outside world. But I mean, I think it's a challenge, and it's something that if, all of these things, I'm just listening to this thinking we got to get better.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, for sure. And it makes it really sheds a light too on kind of where mentally we as a nation are maybe falling down in supporting our veterans, and why maybe the veterans are having such a difficult time. Right. Because you hear about it and
mental health.
Craig, you shared something about, one of your COs, was it a CO of yours, that passed away not that long ago and really was kind of
Sergeant Major.
Yeah.
Sergeant Major committed suicide. Yeah. It was with 9th Combat Tank. Yep.
Yeah. And was one of the catalysts, right, for, heel and toe for Heroes. Yep. So, I mean, hearing it, it's just like, what do you do to fix it? And how do you even begin to fix that? The government is just a behemoth, right?
Yeah. And then, we're told, and Brandon, you and I have talked about this, how, like you have a skill set, like, man, you show up on time, you can handle pressure, you can do all this stuff. People need you. Great. Where are they at? Right. And what I see a lot of companies doing is that they don't understand the veteran culture, one. Yep. And then number two, they don't look to bring those people in and or to have someone to understand, like, we need to tap into this over here. What's going on? Why is an officer with 20 years experience, what is he going to bring to the table? Let me tell you what he can bring to the table. I was in Afghanistan as a current operations officer steering 205 people. Right. And you go to a job and they're like, well, we don't know if you're qualified. I'm like, excuse me? And then, they're right. And they're trying to tell you about leadership. And it's like, I've been 20 years in an organization that taught leadership. Exactly. I was doing more at 20 than you've been doing your career. Excuse me? Like, you're kind of like, what's like, so it's, they're in their comfort zone. And they don't want to leave their comfort zone, and that's part of the problem. And I think it takes other organizations.
No, I mean, and thank you for shining this light on this issue, because it's so enlightening for me. Because as Brandon was just saying that, and just listening to your comments, I'm thinking to myself, how often I pick up the newspaper, or I see on the news, or I read online some soldier has taken their life, or battling some mental health issues. And I think that most people probably look at that and think, I guess the battles over in Afghanistan were too much for them, or Iraq was too much for them, or whatever. And I'm sitting here listening to this, and it's thinking it's not always battle induced. It's sometimes coming back and not being able to readjust and get acclimated and not be able to get some opportunities. And now all of a sudden, to your point, I'm the breadwinner. I'm the person that my family's relying on. And it's not, I don't want to make it like male, because it's females as well. There's lots of servicemen and women who are coming back and just aren't being. And I can see, though, honestly, where a lot of companies look at this and they're like, well, it doesn't have experience in the sales arena, or doesn't have experience in this. And it's like, yeah, because I was serving the country. That's why I don't have the experience you're looking for.
Well, and then it compounds itself too, right? Because like Craig's saying, like, they are trained for a mission, and Craig just alluded to it. Like, my mission to come back is to get a job. Well, if I'm applying, you don't experience that type of, and I don't know another word to put on it, whether it's rejection or failure. Maybe it's failure of a mission, because you've said my mission now is to get reacclimated and to find a job, and I'm not doing it. Now, you probably don't feel 30 failures in your entire career in the Marine Corps, right? And you're feeling that almost on a daily basis. So now all of a sudden, the pressure mentally that puts on you, it's crippling.
And you're without your unit. You know
Correct.
what I mean? You're without,
there's nobody to lean into.
There's no suffering
right.
with others, right? It's you suffering on your own for the first time without your teammates and without your unit. And that is just,
that's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean,
you go from a high performing organization with lots of support to nothing. So the best analogy I could tell you, imagine Dale Earnhardt Jr. was racing and then quit. And the next day, no one knew who he was. And he went to a race shop. Was like, hey, I could do this. Like, well, we don't know you. We don't think you have the experience. And I was like, wait a minute. Well, let me tell you what a race car is. You're like, hey, I've done this. I kind of know, but you haven't done it here.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you're kind of like, well, can you give me a chance? Okay, let's go through this. And so, without another veteran helping another veteran, it's impossible. And without Michael helping me, I would have definitely probably would have throat punched a bunch of people, which would have been very bad on my part.
That ain't good for the resume, Craig.
It's a whole nother show.
Yes.
Well, Craig, so I think this is a perfect segue into this about, what you're doing. The mission statement, of course, for Heel and Toe for Heroes is through motorsports. Heel and Toe for Heroes will support veterans, veteran families, and veteran organizations, brings veterans together at the racetrack and supports veteran small businesses. First of all, good on you for this, because I think it's shameful that we're now asking the veterans to help themselves, right? Basically, because it seems like whether it's you or Andy Reese or other veterans that we've had on the show, it seems like everybody is looking for a way to work with, veterans that haven't, it's the helping hand. It's like you've made it. You had an opportunity with BMW and you've taken full advantage of that. And now you're reaching back down off the wagon, so to speak, or whatever, to pick up another veteran. Talk to us a little bit about that. What was I think we kind of are seeing the catalyst to that, but
So over the past 7 years, I've been, Brandon will tell you, I'm a very open person. I will tell you my life experiences. I'll tell you where I screwed up. It doesn't bother me one bit. I will tell you my failures. And so I've been talking to veterans, and when you get out, you go to the Veterans Affairs and you get a disability rating. And I went through it. I went through that whole process, and I talked to a lot of veterans, and I'm like, have you done this? They're like, no, I was told that I wouldn't get anything. I'm like, no, like, you need to go back. And so I push a bunch of veterans to go back, and I'm realizing that there's a lot of veterans out there that aren't getting help. They're not getting support, medically or anything. And so that's where this whole thing started, of just helping veterans. Where the racing aspect came into is that this past year in February, got invited to help out the Chandler School. So the Chandler School is a school for dyslexic and ADHD kids. They have the ACE racing program. And so they teach their kids about racing and tire pressures and how things work. And then the ACE racing program, they go to a racetrack and they actually do work at the racetrack. So it brings them out of their shell where they wouldn't do it. They're not always the one racing, but sometimes they do. So I got a chance to go out and help. And by helping, I mean, I'm carrying gas. I'm going across the wall. We're changing tires. I'm like, this is fun. This is like back in the military, I'm learning. I'm also learning. So I'm one of my strength finders. One of my strengths is I'm a learner. So I'm learning about the car and how it works and what's going on. And I'm like, this is fun. I'm enjoying it. I went to, Alabama it's the World Racing League that they run in right now. So I went to Alabama, went to Atlanta, but then, in June we're in Daytona, and I'm talking and I'm looking around and I was like, no one's raising money for veterans here. There's a lot of money here and people that want to help or could help. No one's raising money for veterans. So the entire drive in June, driving home 7 hours, my mind just started coming up with this idea of like, I've got the veteran connection. Now I'm seeing the racing connection. If I could bring these two together, I'm seeing a niche to just maybe bring some money in and then help veterans. So that's where this thing started. And the breakdown, the mission statement, the plan right now is I don't want to have my own center. I don't want to have like my own services. I just want to like go to the racetrack and get money to like, hey, someone in Kansas calls us up and go, hey, a veteran needs a wheelchair ramp. We'll help out, right? Or someone needs help over here. The races that you guys were talking about earlier, hey, let's go help raise money for this race. At BMW, we have the veterans group. And so one of the veterans up there in New Jersey, she does a lot with housing up there. And I'm like, okay, we could help you up there. We could raise money for your stuff that you're doing and provide money to you and tell people, because once again, we're at this niche I'm in and seeing there's no one there talking about this and raising money. And of course, the nonprofit side is tax free, which helps a lot of businesses out. So we want to pass that on. And then the other thing behind that is obviously bringing veterans together at the racetrack. I've learned time and time again, it takes veterans to help veterans. We got to go sit down and go, look, dude, I struggled. I've got some PTSD. This is what I went through. I had to go back and get some counseling done because I was, supposed to be in Disney World, the happiest place on earth. And I'm stressed. I'm pissed at my wife. I'm yelling at them. And I'm like, something's not right. I'm supposed to be happy. I'm out of the military. What's going on? And so I've shared that with veterans of what I've gone through. And so I'm like, I got to bring veterans to the track. And I've actually had a lot of wives come to me and go, get my husband out of the house. He doesn't have friends anymore. He doesn't talk to anyone. All he does is work. And I'm like, okay, I got to get veterans to the track. And one of the things I want to do also at the track, if you guys have been, there's an old saying, right? If you want to make a small fortune in racing, start with a large fortune, right? It takes money. Yeah. And so when a veteran comes to the track, I want to be able to have money where, hey, we'll pay for your hotel. We'll give you some food. And then I've got your kit bag for the weekend. So if you want to go across the wall, I got it. So you just come out here, hang out and relax. And then the last thing is I don't see anyone helping veteran small businesses. I don't see any, so I want to get a race car one day and be like, hey, this veteran, which we have a Navy veteran up here, he sells pressure washers. Hey, dude, we're going to put you all over LinkedIn and we're going to put your name on our car and we're going to advertise for you, and let's help you out. Cause I just don't see that happening either. So that's the idea behind this.
It's so good. And it's interesting to me because you think about motorsports, especially, I think most fans of motorsports are probably some of the most patriotic
100%,
red, white and blue, USA. And the fact that, we've got a void there where we're not maybe capitalizing on all of the And look, I mean, we've all been to races where they've probably, especially around Veterans Day or whatever, there's buckets put out and there's things like that or whatever. And I'm sure that, NASCAR is doing stuff at a high level to different organizations. But the reality of it is, what I hear you saying is, we could be doing a lot more at the local level. We could be doing a lot more with some of these families and make immediate impact, because we all know that when you deal with large, operations like that, there's so much bureaucracy that gets involved, and it's like, it takes a long time for it to filter down and get to that person who owns the pressure washer business that you discussed. Right. And so I love this idea of, what you're doing with Heel and Toe. For somebody like myself, who's not, I follow, racing, but what was it about Heel and Toe? I know that's a racing concept. Just tell me about how that ties in.
All right. So Jeff Goddard, who's on our board, his whole family's into racing. He's been with BMW. His brother, Kai Goddard, owns Track Record, who's been a huge help to this organization. They've got a racing family, and I've gone out to Phoenix, got a chance to go on a track at Apex Motorsports out there, and he was always saying, like, I got to work on my heel and toe. I'm going to work on my heel and toe. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And so what it is, it's a racing technique that when you're going into a corner, one foot, your right foot's on the brake, your left foot engages at the clutch, right? But when you do that, there's a mismatch between the transmission or the engine and the transmission. So what you do is you take your heel, blip the throttle to bring your RPMs back up. So when you downshift and engage the clutch, you don't disrupt the car and you're able to hit the turn and go. So when I came home, I started looking at racing for veterans. I started looking at racing for heroes. But in the back of my mind, it was this heel and toe, heel and toe, heel and toe. And it was just sitting there, Finally, I'm like, wait a minute, heel and toe for heroes? Then I had like one of those epiphanies, like, hey, this thing may work. And that's where the idea came from, bringing the racing side and the veteran side together with something that I don't see out there in the environment. Cool name, catchy name, cool catchphrase.
It's great too, because there's this, if you read about it, there's this synchronicity to it too, right? Like, the whole point is so that you don't skip a beat, and that you can smooth transition. You can continue to just, race your race. And I love it. I mean, I think it's brilliant, and I'm proud of you. I've known you for a long time. And I hear a passion in your voice when you talk about this that excites me. So I'm excited for you.
How do people help with this? How do they get involved with it? How do they get, do they reach out to you? Do they go to the website? What's the direction for those that are out there listening? Cause I have to tell you, I know our listeners well enough that hopefully they're sharing the same frustration listening to this as I have been, which is like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, we got to do, more. So how do they get involved?
All right. So, we're in the very beginning of this foundation. I've got Instagram, I've got Facebook and LinkedIn started. I'm building the website right now, which we're trying to go live by October 14th with the website, and all information will be up in there. On Facebook, Craig at ht4h.org is my email address. They can get a hold of me, and just start asking questions. I've been working on building. You got to get a bank account. You get PayPal, and we filed for the 501(c)(3) paperwork. We're waiting on that to come back from the federal government. But right now, it's reach out to me, hit us on Facebook or Instagram, even LinkedIn, and we can just start the conversation and see how things are going and see how people can help. People really want to help right now. There's, of course, you got startup costs, but then if someone wants to go out and buy us some race kits, great, let's do it so we can start building this thing up as we move forward. Yeah, and real fast, you talked earlier about the we need to do better. My question for you guys is, tell me what veteran organizations you know of today.
Yeah.
Do you know some?
I mean, we do,
Wounded
but
Warrior, like some of those, and the
and
ones
what are those for? Those are for individuals that are like missing limbs and everything.
Yeah, sure.
And this is more, I'm not trying to get those guys here, but what about the people that are that don't have a problem, that are just dealing with things? And that's where that middle layer I want to get to and help them out, because when you're at the top of the pyramid, you've got someone helping you, but no one's helping the 4-year E4 that just got out yesterday, who's like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Well, you're not 100% disabled. You don't have a Purple Heart. You're not missing a limb. We can't help you. And you're like, well, who do I talk to? What do I do? And that's where we want to go and kind of help people out.
And I would even argue that John and I probably have a little more exposure just because of some of the people we've talked to because of the podcast. I would tell you that I would argue that most Americans couldn't name a single foundation, anything, right?
I think it's interesting to me because Brandon mentioned a guest that we've had on. One of the biggest challenges in sports, and we talk a lot with coaches and sports psychologists and performance coaches, and everybody talks about this identity loss that goes on with a former athlete. It's the same thing with our military guys. Like everybody listening, just replace serviceman, servicewoman with athlete, and you have hit every show we've done in the past where we talk about this challenges, the struggles of this is the identity. And what people start to struggle with is, I've shared on here before, when my son got out of playing, college football, it's like, you no longer have the structure. You no longer have the coaching. You no longer have the team and the unit with you. You're on your own. You're having to figure some of this stuff out on your own. Your identity as a quote unquote football player is gone. And it's the same thing with our soldiers. And so that's why I really, and we'll include this in the show notes as well, but I really hope that two things I want people to take away here is, one, there's a need, and we need to be supporting these types of organizations like the one you've created, but also understand that Craig's just in the beginning stages of this, guys. Mm-hmm. It's not like, you're going to type in heel and toe for heroes and all the, fancy websites and Instagram pages and all that stuff's going to pop up. So be patient and understand, like, hey, look, we can still reach out, and maybe your support, financial, whatever the case may be, can help build some of these things to make it better. So because you have to, just as you said earlier about NASCAR teams, you want to make, it starts with having some, amount of money that can, some funding that's going to support some of those things. So definitely.
Yeah, this idea started June 6th.
Yeah.
And to build a foundation and to have an idea, and then, to add everything on top of it. Like, I'm turning into a social media guy. I'm turning into a politician. I'm building a website. I'm like, I've never done this stuff before, but I'm learning as I'm going, as I'm doing this stuff. And then back to your points about the athletes, I can definitely tell you from personal experience. I've sat here and like, who is Craig Wiggins? Right. What do I like to do this? I don't know. I don't know what I like to do anymore. Like I've been trying to figure out who I am. And so recently I've gotten back into running because I stopped. I was just so happy to be done for a while. And then I started drinking and I got more, and you start building these habits and you're like, what's going on? And now I'm like, wait a minute. I actually do like running. I'm going to run for Craig now, not because of some other reason. So I've started to get back on the treadmill, getting like, hey, I like this. I do enjoy this. I know David Goggins talks about it too. Like you get done and you're like, what am I supposed to do? Because you don't have anything else and you're trying to figure that piece out. And if I can help veterans transition and go figure out who you are, because you have this identity that's forced upon you, right? And now you got to go, what do I like to do? What do I not like to do? What am I going to invest my time and effort into?
Well, and I'm going to throw this challenge out to the listeners, Craig, is that, I can imagine there's some people listening to this in their car, on their commute to work, whatever the case may be, or maybe just on a trip and they're thinking, well, I'd love to be able to help out. I don't have the resources right now. You have the human resource. You have, maybe you're a web designer. Maybe you're somebody who deals with social media for some organization and you're thinking, I can't I'm not in a position right now to give financially, but I can give some service hours. I can reach out to you and help out with building out that social media platform, or I can help you with, the web design, whatever the case may be, because that's stuff that's human currency. That doesn't take you doing, anything from a financial standpoint. If you don't have it, everybody's at a different place right now. But if you don't have it, find some way to help, because I'm telling you right now, I mean, it really has been an eye-opening interview for me, because of the fact that I just think about there was a video clip that just went viral this week where a veteran was in a truck and was, getting ready to go and commit suicide or something like that. And a veteran police officer comes to the scene and is able to talk to the gentleman and get him the right help. But these things are unfolding every single day, because of all of the things we talked about today. So, man, we can't thank you enough for joining us and just taking the time to share with us a little bit of your platform. Absolutely. As you continue to grow. We definitely would love to have you come back on and share some updates and keep us posted on how things are progressing. And, we definitely, support what you're doing. And like I say, we're going to include some things in the show notes to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to, find you, get behind this. And if we can make any connections, help you make any connections with some of the folks that we've had on the show as well, we'd be happy to do that.
And just keep us posted.
Here's the biggest thing. If you know a veteran, talk to them. When they say, I'm good, say bullshit.
Yeah.
Are you okay? How are you doing? What's going on? I mean, we've got Sergeant Major Brookman, 9th Combat Battalion Sergeant Major, committed suicide. Why? Combat vet. Man, he was awesome in Afghanistan. Great mentor, awesome leader. What happened? You know what I mean? Why? And then there's too much suicide. There's too many people that need help. They're suffering in silence. And that's the biggest thing. Talk to them. What's going on? Are you sure? Don't give me this. Like, let's talk.
Right.
And that's why I tell veterans a lot of time. Don't feed me a lot of crap. I want to know. Tell me what's going on. And so I think doing that too will help understand and get to what, I'm struggling right now, cool. How can I help you? What's going on? Cause veteran, we keep everything tucked away, especially as a Marine Corps officer, you can't show an ounce of weakness or pain, anything, because your Marines, if they see it, they're like, oh, he's weak. She's weak. So yeah, a male is good at hiding emotions and everything. A military male is just 300 times better at it. I mean, I can have a broken leg and be like, I'm good. Don't need anything. Ice and Motrin. That's what Doc would give me, and I'm done.
Yeah.
Well,
and look, I mean, understand too that these individuals you're dealing with, guys, are not wired to isolate. They're used to being part of a group, a larger group, a larger cause. And so, to your point earlier, and as we've been discussing, I mean, it's changing the way that I'm going to be looking at these situations, because if I see, soldier, veteran that is no longer a part of a pack, there's something wrong. We need to be changing that. We need to be finding a way to help out, to get them brought back into the fold, to get them more acclimated to what's happening, because it's not easy. And good Lord, I mean, they've given so much and sacrificed so much time and all that. The least we can be doing out here is, helping out.
It's giving back.
We can is giving back for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, God bless you. We really appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you for your service, by the way, and your continued service.
Welcome.
That's the thing that I always admire so much about the veterans we've had on this show is it seems like we're always thanking them for their service that has previously been brought to us. But then also they're always continuing just to give and just to give and give. And so I feel like we're just constant gratitude. So
servant leadership.
It is.
Yep.
It definitely is. Well, thanks, Craig. I'll talk to you soon.
Do it all again.
Well, we appreciate you, brother.
I don't doubt that for a second. I can tell you that. So, well, we appreciate everything you're doing. In spite of the Citadel connection, we just will let that go. We still support you. Take care.
Talk to you
Thank
soon. All right. Bye-bye.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.